a couple minutes.
Okay.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. I'm going to give it just a couple more minutes while people start to pile in. So take your time and grab some coffee if you need to. We'll give it about one more minute and then we'll get started. All right, let's get this show on the road, as they say. Thank you, everyone, so much for attending today's webinar to a topic that's near and dear to my heart, personalization as a loyalty game changer. And I'm super excited to kind of team up with Cheetah Digital to present this to you guys. Before we get started, let's cover off on one quick housekeeping item. On the right side of your screen, there is a Q&A chat panel. Please feel free to put any questions in there. Towards the end of the webinar, we will have an opportunity to kind of go back through and get some of those questions answered. Quick introductions. My name is Mark Pernards. I'm the head of product marketing at Lob, and I have the wonderful Liz, who I will allow you to do a quick intro, Liz.
Hi, as Mark said, I'm Liz. I'm the Director of Services Offerings at Cheetah Digital, and I'm really excited to be here today.
Yeah, as am I. I think this is a great topic and something that is obviously top of mind for marketers specifically in today's environment. Quick reminder: I will be sending out a copy of the actual webinar itself within the next 24 to 48 hours. So everyone, be on the look in your email inbox for that. Liz, take it away.
All right. So people that know me know I am a student of history, and I think it's important to talk about how we got to where we are today. So in 1994, Lou Montulli, who was not in a hair band, despite what the picture looks like, he created the cookie as a way to make the first shopping cart in Netscape Navigator. And before that, there really was no way of tracking people's movements across the internet. And for better or worse, that turned the internet into a place where commerce can happen and really increase personalization efforts. So then you have Amazon, which launched as an online bookstore in 1995, but really turned into a juggernaut in the mid 2000s. And a few years later, the iPhone launched. And with the proliferation of smartphones, you have all different kinds of browsers and operating systems. And brands realized cookies don't work the same way on a mobile device. So we had to be more aggressive and come up with a few methods of tying user activities to an identity. And I mention all that because it underscores a couple of things, right? Technology that empowers consumers to make a lot of decisions is multiplying and it's changing rapidly. We don't really have the luxury of time in how we want to respond to these changes because the power is in their hands and we have to work hard. So you'll notice the last item on here is privacy. So consumers finally understand fully how valuable their data is. And so they were like, we want to protect ourselves. And you've heard of all the legislation, GDPR, CCPA. These are things that are adding on to that windy road. Which brings us to today with a crumbling cookie, because we know when Google sneezes, everyone gets a cold. And so they've decided that next year they're going to stop using cookies. And it's really a preventative measure because they know that there's going to be even more privacy legislation that protects consumers. They're proposing something called the Federated Learning of Cohorts, which is really kind of a semi-anonymous way to group people based on their interests. So you might have seen at the end of a YouTube video, they say, can you answer this question? Are you familiar with this brand? Have you purchased from this brand before? And so data like that will put you into a cohort where advertisers will be able to approach you, but they won't have your PII. So what this means is we've got to pivot. And today we're going to talk about how marketers make that pivot.
And it's actually, just to add on to this, it's crazy how over the last year with the pandemic, as well as like the dissolution of Google cookies, has kind of pushed marketers outside of the mold and to be creative and to get really creative, to be honest, right? And on top of that, you add in technology, being able to support them and provide different data points that they've never had before. So in our experience on the law side, we've seen a lot of marketers kind of push for different channels, especially offline, right? And utilize direct mail in different ways that we've never seen, as well as think outside of the box of just always on campaigns that are not just acquisition focused, but are focused on, brand loyalty, obviously win back. A lot of those are coming into place now. So it's great to see the marketing landscape itself push into a different realm, and it's been sped up with the activation of technology. And it's something that I don't think is going to change, for better or for worse over the next few years. I think we're in a different area, and I think it's a really good area to be in.
Yeah, and you could see from even the history that there's never been a time where it's like, okay, we have the answer.
Right.
This is it. There's always that change.
Yeah.
So your point is very well taken. And, we got to change again. So today we're on the same page, even though we deal really with different channels. It's about loyalty and personalization. And so you can see from this slide that there's been a shift again across time. And what I want people to walk away with is that we want you to think about these as less than as methods or programs, but really as being guiding philosophies and outcomes. So loyalty and personalization as outcomes from the efforts that you put into your program. And you can see from the stats on the slide that customers really respond as you would expect. They spend more and they spend more often. So we really want to think about the way that we acquire, manage, and activate our data to bring outcomes of loyalty and personalization.
Yeah, and to my previous comments, like technology has given marketers the keys to the castle when it comes to data. We understand more about our customers now than we ever have before. So for something like the dissolution of the cookie, and it's not that big of a deal. It's less scary than it feels, right? Because now with data, you feel like you have that more brand loyalty with your customer and understanding what they care about and their pain points and needs.
Right. And it's really what we're going to talk about in terms of, like you said, they have the data, they've acquired it, but how do they manage and then activate it?
Yep, that makes complete sense. So let's actually dive in. So let's cover away some brands are cutting through that digital noise and some of the cross-channel approaches that they're actually executing on.
Okay, so I mentioned before that there's been a change in how we look at loyalty and personalization. It used to be, F name and L name, and that was great personalization. But I want to say that send time optimization is now table stakes, right? It's a little bit more sophisticated, but it's something that every marketer should be thinking about because it has a direct effect on open rates and click rates. But it's one part of a series of decisions. And this is something that I've been talking to clients about my whole career. There's no one thing that you are going to do that's going to optimize your program. It's really all of those parts together that push your program forward.
Yep. And so to that point, there's actually connecting the different channel points, right? There's three solid inputs. There's a lot more than that, but three solid inputs to which like a marketer has to ensure that their campaign is hitting the mark. First, it's the actual data itself, right? They can understand what the consumer is engaging with on their website, what they're purchasing, what they're putting into their cart, what content they're actually reading, and utilize at their fingertips to put together more personalized campaigns that are wrapped around the actual perfect timing. And that's where we go into the timing itself, right? With the tools in your tool chest, you now have the ability to time the campaigns in a manner of understanding what's resonating, what's not, and then focusing back in on the data to making sure that if you are sending it at this point, is that the best time? And then look at the performance of the campaign throughout its entire life cycle. Timing is extremely important. I think it's one thing that people don't take into account quite enough. But to understand the length of the campaign, how are you running it, and when are you sending out those different touch points across the different channels? And then lastly, the most important piece, I think, to this whole thing is personalization, right? The side of like a marketer just sending out a blanket email or a blanket direct mail piece or even an SMS message without any personalization of knowing who you are, what you care about, your pain points, your needs will fall flat. And I think personalization as far as understanding what was the last product that you purchased and surfacing something that you might be interested in purchasing again, or personalization in like understanding how you've interacted with the brand in the past. And then simple things like just brand awareness campaigns around like, hey, happy birthday. I know that Chewy, for instance, does a really great job with this on direct mail on, celebrating your pet's birthday or sending out a Christmas card. But utilizing the different channels as part of your omni-channel orchestration is incredibly, incredibly important. It now technology allows us to connect all of the dots in a single workflow so that you can execute a branding campaign through an SMS message or send out an email or send out a direct mail piece followed up by an email. This allows us to actually connect the dots and look at the data to figure out what's working and what's not. And then maybe that you understand SMS is a channel that for you is falling flat, remove it, right? And then you can actually set your campaigns up with the use of technology in the way that you best see fit. And all of this is highly personalized with merge variables, feeding on data and webhooks and everything else that goes into the technology to support it, which I think is incredibly important. And marketers really need to be utilizing that in order to be successful at what they do.
Right, and I cannot say enough the idea that everything has to work together. Right. We talk about breaking down silos within our organizations to get the teams to work together. And the same exact principle needs to apply to your campaigns for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's moving over to the always testing mindset, right? A lot of our clients, what we've seen is because the last year has been so crazy, they don't want to be so pushy on acquisition campaigns, right? It's like, they understand that their customers are going through some tough times, and we all are as we start to feel our way through and outside of the pandemic. And now it's an opportunity for them to kind of test different messaging, test different copy, understand what's working. A lot of the marketers that we've seen have over the last year have developed deep relationships with the data analytics teams, right? And they're pushing out A/B testing and multivariant testing and really figuring out on what's working and what's not. And I think regardless of the pandemic, that same mindset is a shift that's now going to carry over outside of the pandemic as well.
Oh yeah, my favorite 3 words are test, test, test. So right. I believe in it.
It's something that I push to my team all the time. Test, learn, iterate, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of what you do, whether it's a marketing campaign or just some internal processes, it's so important, and it's a great mindset to have.
Yeah. So as we're talking about that, I think we can never lose sight of the fact that we're talking to people, right? Like these aren't just inboxes or phones or mailboxes. These are actual individuals who are at the center of it. And so at Cheetah, we really encourage our clients to keep the customer experience at the forefront as they acquire, manage, and activate their data. So as they're acquiring new data, they're making sure that it's managed by ingesting it into the proper platform in a secure and compliant way, as we talked about data privacy, and that it's activated to provide value to their customers across all the channels, the ones that you just showed us. And again, with the silos, it bears repeating that your customer is not thinking about your different teams. They're having an experience with your brand. And so there are a lot of companies who are missing an opportunity to merge loyalty efforts and marketing efforts. And I really want people to think about this personally. So my aunt loved a particular department store, and there was a shopper at the store, and her name was Pat. So she became friends with Pat, and Pat knew her size, what color she liked, what brands. And so she would put those particular items to the side, and she would call my aunt, Francis, the new XYZ are in. And my aunt would go without fail, spend all the money, and buy more. Right. So those are the things that we think about in a loyalty mindset. Now, how do we apply that in the digital age? And I think I'm ready for us to jump into some examples.
Yeah, for sure. First example is right here. And before we actually dive into that, I'd love the point that you made around remove the silos. Don't run campaigns individually. Allow them to actually feed off of each other, because there's a ton of value that can happen across all of the channels together. So that's hugely important. And we just wanted to make sure that the audience, honed in on that.
Right. And again, back to making it personal, you think about the last time you made a purchase.
Yeah.
What channels, how many channels were you, targeted in, and what made you finally pull that lever? Right. So we can look at ourselves both as marketers and consumers to have that kind of mindset. So when we're talking about these changes, it's clear that someone's going to have to phase in these changes. You've got send time optimization, you've got any other number of efforts. And if they're going to test and see what works, you're not going to be able to do everything at once. And so this is a really easy thing for clients to do, assuming their systems are talking to each other and are integrated like our customer engagement suite, right? So you have marketing campaigns and you have a loyalty program, and you merge them together through a really easy banner that says, hey, we've got this, new product, and you have X number of loyalty rewards. So that gives people that motivation, right? Or maybe they're right on the edge of that next tier. Once you merge those together, what some of our clients have seen is an increase in transactions, revenue per email, open rate, visit rate. It's an easy way to knock all those metrics up, and again, have that personalization and an outcome of loyalty.
Yeah. And it's great to actually see the focus back on the data, right? Understand what's performing, what's not. And then when you're doing that kind of testing mindset, you'll also understand the actual variance within each one of those campaigns that you can start to switch out and test, whether it's copy, imagery, color, whatever it might be.
Right. And this is not the entire email. It's just the banner. So I think this is something that everyone can do.
Yeah, for sure. With that said, let's jump into some examples of how profiling is actually put into work, and like how we're actually combating the crumbling cookie. And I have some great examples, but I'll let you kick off the first one.
Okay, great. So this case study in particular is a really great example of how technology advances and changes in the cultural landscape come together at the same time. So I am not ashamed to admit that I read an article in the Washington Post about how there's a fight now between Gen Z and millennials about skinny jeans not being cool anymore. Apparently, mom jeans are back, and I'm missing my Beverly Hills 90210 dress code. But it just shows you that preferences change, right? And the only way that you can stay on top of those preferences is with that progressive profiling. So I'm old enough to remember when preference centers were the cool kid, But the issue was, and I knew it even back then, if your preferences changed, you weren't going back to a preference center to indicate that. So it really brought to the forefront products like our experiences platform. And so for this client, we were able to set up a quiz that subscribers could use via email or SMS or on their website. And so they were able to gather information about the shoppers themselves and also who they were shopping for. And once they got that information, they were able to use email as a primary channel to include that, style, fit, wash. And they saw their open rates increase as well as their click rates. And so we encourage clients from a progressive standpoint to use experiences on an ongoing basis throughout the life cycle.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense. And on that note, I just became aware that skinny jeans are no longer in as well. So I'm gonna go back to the drawing board on the old wardrobe. Yeah, let's dive into some direct mail examples on that front. So one of our actual client has taken this whole testing mindset to a whole new level, right? I mean, they run campaigns with up to 500 different variants in that. And they are using this to actually test, obviously different colors, imagery, copy, form factors, envelopes to the left, window to the right. But what they're also doing is they're testing a bit different data that they have on the back end from how the customers interacted with their product in the past, what they've been interested in, maybe what they've done on the website. Any of the actual engagement scores that they have, they're going out and testing a piece of direct mail that's targeted towards them. And I think that direct mail over the last year or so has taken on a whole new role in the fact that people are, somewhat saturated sitting in front of their Zoom all day and their computers, right? So direct mail kind of gives them the brand, that one engagement piece, and where the person gets to disconnect from their computer and walk to the actual mailbox, right? And have that single line of attention with them. There's not really a lot of other channels that can do that. But with that, when you have their individual attention, you want to make sure that you're getting the right piece with the right offer and that it's highly personalized in front of them at the right time. And that's what a lot of our clients are doing. And this is a great example of those different offers in which a single campaign is run.
And what I love about this is we think about, we're talking to customers, right? And they're having an experience in their inbox or, on their phone with personalized SMS and email messages. So it makes sense to have direct mail be personalized as well, because they're expecting that type of approach from brands. So this completely makes sense.
In the way that we had talked about it before, and it being integrated with your omni-channel campaigns, is that you've had a conversation, even a live conversation with the sales rep, right? And the sales rep actually has gathered your information and some of your pain points and needs and what you're looking for. They can send a follow-up email combined with a direct mail piece that says, hey, it was great to meet you. Super happy. I think this is an offer that you might be interested in based on our conversation. But whatever it is, it's still that recognition of thank you for taking the time to interacting with our brand, and then it's highly personalized. So it doesn't feel like the old value pack coupons. It's something that you're interested in and is targeted towards what you're looking to solve for. Another great example of this is a client that used this as a win-back campaign, right? So our client had information on previous purchases from the color of what they were looking at, from the different materials that they were looking at, and maybe this person hadn't purchased within the last 4 or 5 months, and they wanted to send out a very highly personalized campaign that was targeted with imagery that they knew that the client would resonate for based on their purchase in the past, and then a special offer, and then you tag in their guarantee. And this is the stuff that actually makes the client feel like, okay, this brand understands me. They knew I had, and then it drives that actual loyalty and trust. So when they are ready to make an additional purchase, this brand is top of mind, which I think is incredibly important. This is one of the ways that we're seeing direct mail used quite a bit. I think, again, a lot of the transition has gone from acquisition into more brand loyalty campaigns over the last year, because direct mail is now just another channel, another tool in the tool chest for a marketer to be able to interact with their customers.
Yeah, and having a conversation with our Cheetah loyalty guru, Roger, he said, we want customers to be loyal to the brand and not necessarily loyal to the discount.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge. Even if a brand decides to discount, I'm loyal whether they're giving me $15 off or whether they're giving me no dollars off, because I believe in this brand and I have a relationship with them.
Yeah, and like, it's kind of funny to say that. So, quick story, and I'll TLDR, but I'm a product marketer. My previous company was, selling desktop software, right? And every year we would sell desktop software, and to make our final push, we would offer a 50% discount. But because that was so successful, we started doing it on a yearly basis. And what we were doing is actually training our customers to wait and purchase until that time of year would come up, and because they knew that at some point we were going to run that discount. And I think that's where you want to get out of not kind of brainwashing your customers to wait for that discount, and then to be able to kind of have that brand loyalty throughout the year, and not be promotional based, but also just interactive and engagement based too. The next example is a great example of a customer that used profiling in a way that they knew that they were having an issue with some of their customers churning, because their dinner options that they were actually providing were quite limited. What they had done is they sent out this piece, and the actual image on it is directly with a meal that the customer had purchased previously. What they wanted the customer to do is to interact with it, provide them a special offer to kind of get them to log in and go to the URL again. As part of that, they would log in, they would see that the dinner options had expanded, that they had the $40 off, which is actually, I think up to 2 meals were free. And then they also had the option of pausing their subscription rather than churning. And this was a great thing for them to just have a prior engagement with a customer, help them to understand that there is some value. Here's a coupon to get you going to try us one more time. And then as that customer logged in, that brand loyalty and kind of expectation was set as the customer started to interact with the different products.
Yeah, and this is something I could easily see going across multiple channels for sure, and timing being important, right? Get people while they're hungry, or even sending a message that looks at when people are getting paid, right? When you have this disposable income to apply to something like this.
For sure. And I think the art of this is the fact that every single variable on these postcards can be changed out. Like going back to the previous example of 500 different variants, this can all be populated and run in a single campaign in a matter of days, where it used to take, up to 6 weeks, 6 months to execute a large campaign like that. Whereas all these variants cannot be actually be operationalized based on, again, triggers or interactions that the customer had. And I think that's huge. Marketers shouldn't get overwhelmed that this is tough stuff to do. This all can be implemented with technology, which I think is a huge learning. I think this is the last section. So using engagement signals to create personalized journeys. So with this, we'll walk through a little bit of brand awareness and some different ideas and thoughts of way that this actually creates inaction and brand awareness. And one of this is one of our clients actually, this is what we'd like to call an above and beyond campaign, right? So obviously the customer has interacted with a brand, they've made a previous purchase, but what this simply is just a thank you card. It's just sending out a campaign that's saying, hey, thank you. We acknowledge that you made a purchase. By the way, let's give you an understanding of where that purchase is going to. So for this example, this is obviously a wine purchase that they may have made, but they're showing them that, hey, your purchase isn't going to some large corporation. It's actually going to our small lot wineries that are being able to provide you these different brands that you may not be able to get in the grocery store. And what this does, it provides that brand awareness on the top. It's just a simple thank you. It's a simple note saying that, hey, we really appreciate your business. And when this customer goes back to purchase more wine, they may think twice about like, hey, rather than doing it at the grocery store, I'm going to go back on and purchase through this vendor because that they're top of mind, right? I know where my money's going to, and I feel proud to support that. And they're going to start to create that brand loyalty towards it. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, and what's great about this is something that we talked about before is we generally talk about B2C, but this is a great example for a B2B client of how they can use personalized direct mail.
Yep, and it's something that people aren't thinking about, but it's now coming to the surface, over the last year or so, because it's driving marketers to think outside of the box, both on B2C and the B2B side. From that front, back to the B2C. So this is another great example of a client that was looking to. It's more of a retention marketing campaign in which their customer had maybe made a purchase on their website in the past and had some indication of like what that purchase was. So you see all the imagery on these different pieces, and it's all focused on previous purchases that they have made, right? They had purchased that dress, or they're surfacing other dresses that they may have wanted to purchase in the past or different brands. There's also some indication that like, hey, maybe you haven't made an update to your closet over the last 3 or 4 months. Here's some options for you. Here's some different box and some different promotions that we're running. But again, this piece can be highly calibrated with different variations in order to target the right customer based on what you know. So if we think through segmentation, we think through age demographics, whatever it might be, you have more data at your fingertips to highly customize and build that brand loyalty in different ways. And then we go back to test, learn, and iterate, right? On the top line of every marketing campaign should be the idea that this can be highly personalized and customized. So the more you understand about your customer, the better and the more brand loyalty it's going to drive.
Well, I see your example and I raise you our example. So we've got a client who's a large multi-channel retailer in the home furnishing industry. And one thing about them is they're always asking, what can we do to provide a more personalized experience that nobody else is doing? And that mindset has really caused them to innovate. And they're obsessed in a really good way with automation and efficiency as they acquire, manage, and activate their data. And so we work with them to, as they're acquiring the data across channels that demonstrate intent, especially cart browsing and favoriting. And then these are filtered through this priority stack and this really advanced recommendations engine. And that puts out individualized decisions for each and every customer. So if you're looking for a brown leather couch, the recommendations that you get will be for things that go with the brown leather couch, whether it's a cream colored blanket or a rug that has brown in it. These are very personalized recommendations. And the other thing that they do, because you could be eligible for any number of messages, is that the system governs those decisions.
Yeah.
So if you're eligible for a triggered campaign or a marketing campaign, you won't get inundated, because as we're approaching you across different channels, we don't want to saturate you in a bad way, right? Because it's all about that customer experience. So they're extremely sophisticated, and the lift in revenue proves that if you focus on loyalty and personalization, your customers will respond.
Yeah, for sure. And it builds out that loyalty, right? Like it builds that trust with the brand. If you don't feel like you're getting saturated in a single channel, right? Like I know for me, for instance, like getting hit up with retargeting and digital ads can sometimes feel like a little bit more. It's like, I'm thinking about buying it, but you're creeping me out because you're following me everywhere. But I think that's an important point that you made is don't oversatch a channel, have that actual proper mix and understanding what's performing and what's interacting. And if you know that your segment is not interacting with a specific channel, or if that channel is just not working for one reason or another, you have the ability to cut that off and then focus on the other channels.
Right. And when you're not siloed, you're having those conversations.
Yeah. And then I think the big thing with not silo is having all the performance data under one roof, right? You can actually look at it from a campaign perspective.
Absolutely. That's right. You got to make friends with your data people and your analysts. I like to encourage marketers to make it personal as they're deciding what elements they want to bring into their program. What experiences wow you? What does your journey look like? So I go to a well-known, unnamed coffee company that has a really sophisticated engagement strategy. And I hadn't been recently because I'm trying to lose some pandemic pounds, which means that I haven't been using the app. But what they did was send me an email warning me that the rewards that I had would disappear. And I thought that was great to be reached out to on a different channel. And my behavior that they're tracking is what prompted that. So they're really focused on experiences and outcomes. They incorporate gamification to get customers to come in more often, to repeat purchases of specific products, and even select new products. So they're really acquiring that data in order to determine what offer lever is going to work. And then they activate that across all the channels, the point of sale, wallet, email, app. And I think this is just a fantastic example. They're very sophisticated, but at the core of it, their guiding North Star is that personalization and loyalty are important. They're not only methods, but they're also outcomes.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
So we say all that to say that loyalty is evolving. People used to think of it, as a program. You go in. I still, at my local car wash, I have the little card that they stamp, but it's a lot more complex than that. Really, it's really that customer first philosophy, and that just that personalization that helps you move towards that. So I just wanted to kind of sum it up with our big points. You talked about taking that iterative approach when you're testing, and you need to take that approach to acquiring, managing, enriching, and activating that data. You want to reward your customers through those consistent exchanges across channels, that you're interacting with them, and what we call that micro journey accrual. But where you are at any point where you have your hand up to a marketer, we're responding to that. And as I mentioned before, we want to increase loyalty to the brand and not to the discount. And that means that you're turning your customers into advocates, and it also impacts your bottom line. Your revenue and your profit's going to be improved when you're not discounting everything, and it's a really meaningful relationship that you're building.
And I think that's hugely important. I think the other point to this is like patience. None of this is going to happen overnight, right? And the attribution model is really hard when it comes to brand loyalty, but have patience in the actual program and watching it kind of come together. And I think that you'll start to see the fruits of it once you start to do a little bit of it and like get some time under your belt and gain that experience.
Right. And you mentioned that you've got the test, learn, and iterate. Then that requires a plan, a long-term plan. 6, 9, 12 months, and it's important to build all of these things in. So even if it takes a while, as you mentioned, you're learning along the way, and you have those incremental wins. And that's the continuous optimization that every brand should look for.
Yeah, I completely agree. With that, so we've covered off on a ton of hopefully really great information for the audience. Let's jump into some questions. And the first question that came up was around, I'm relatively new to brand loyalty. Where do I start? There's a ton of technology. There's a ton of things. Where do I start? And I think that I was going to let you jump off with this one, Liz.
Okay. I think where to start is making sure that everyone looks at loyalty as an outcome and as a mindset, right? So you can't go into it saying, okay, what kind of program do we need to create? Is it going to be points or dollars or stars or widgets or whatever it is? Because if you're looking at that, you're only looking at one part of the relationship that you have with your customer. So it's really about identifying and having everyone in the organization breaking down those silos to say, we want our customers to be loyal. And what that means is you're going to provide an experience for them along the way. And I know that sounds kind of esoteric, but it really is, the core of it, right? And then you can get to the point where you say, okay, we, along the way, we might want to create this program. How do we talk to people if we want them to be loyal in a program versus our non-loyalty members? And then there's the nuts and bolts. If you're creating a program, doing all of the financial assessments and figuring out if you want a discount and how much money that you're going to put into it and tracking and all that. But pulling all of that back, I think it really starts with that loyalty mindset.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think it's definitely buy-in, right, from a strategic standpoint of what you're looking to accomplish. Gather the actual data points of what you currently have, right? And maybe you haven't run a brand loyalty campaign, but you are collecting a lot of data, whether it's in your CRM system or whatever system it might be. And then the second thing is just patience, like we had mentioned earlier, right? It's like run a campaign, get a campaign out there, figure out what's working and what's not. Don't feel too heavily the necessity to drive into like the actual testing up front, because I think that even getting a single campaign out, it's better to have your line in the water when you're fishing than nothing in the water at all, right? So get something out and then figure out what's working and what's not. Another question that came out that's more around like the direct mail side of it is, how quickly can we see results of a mail piece once it's sent out? And I think, again, that comes down to is that there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's kind of a loaded question. And the fact that with any marketing campaign, your approach to direct mail is the exact same, right? You're not going to get digital ads correct. You're not going to get email correct on your first time. But I think it's important just to get something out there and then test, learn, and iterate from there. I think the value of a product like Lob is the fact that it gives you that ability to send at scale for the actual same price that you would send, a million pieces. So it's kind of transitioning into the more of a technology approach, which I think is incredibly important. But I think maybe, Liz, like you could provide some feedback on like email from a channel perspective and like what that looks like and like how frequently or how often are you going to see results when it comes to that? Because I think that's like a test, learn, and iterate approach as well, right?
Right. And we what we refer to as kind of the fast fail, right?
Yeah.
Within 24 hours, within 24 to 72 hours, you have your interactions with an email. But I want to look at it in two different ways, right?
Yep.
We talk about the campaign itself, but we really want to talk about the customer, right? We want to look at our customer base and see how they respond over time based on what kinds of messages they're getting. Because a campaign, we look at Cyber Monday or Black Friday emails, and those do well, but that's because of the seasonality or the holiday. But what we want to dig down to is on the customer level. How are our customers performing? What are, back to your point about the data, can I look at my data right now and pick out the top 20% of my customers? Can I track them over time and then go to that next cluster of people who are most likely to be my next highly performing customer? So I would encourage people to look at the customer level versus the email, but you could tell fairly quickly if you have a plan because you're testing specific elements and you have an expected result, and either the test proves that or it disproves it. An email, depending on how long the test is, can show you relatively quickly.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I think we got time for one last question. Obviously brand loyalty is pretty high level in the way that it creates awareness. What are some key data points that we should look at knowing that we're successful, that we're being successful in creating that loyalty to the brand?
Ooh, one of my favorite, customer lifetime value, as well as retention. I think that because the essence of loyalty is that you are with us, you stay with us, you spend money, and you spend it more often.
Yep.
And so if we're looking at health of a program and loyalty, I really think that those are the ways to measure it: retention and customer lifetime value.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you'll be able to dig into the data and look at the frequency of purchases, right? Like how often are customers coming back to you and how often are they making those purchases? And then the time frame, like hopefully, it all, again, there's so many different factors that go into this, right? From seasonal businesses to, whatever it might be. But I think that if you can see that customer is, coming back time and time again, that's hugely important. The other thing is brand reviews, right? Like reviews on the website, people that are actually, leaving reviews and are happy and interacting with your product, right? How often do we go when we're about to purchase something from Amazon or wherever it might be, go and look at the reviews. And if it's 4 stars versus 5 stars, that actually makes a huge difference in your buying decision. And I think that if customers are happy with your product and happy with your brand and the interaction that they've had, that's a huge kudos to you and that you're being successful.
100% agree.
Liz, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for spending the last 30 minutes or so with me and going through all this information. And I appreciate the audience attending and look for the recording out in your email. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.